Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here, your source for gaming, tech, emulation, and open source news. Let's get started. Alright, to kick things off, the camping season might not be over just yet. I don't want to get ahead of myself and I don't want to get too excited here, but Mrs. Sujano and I have been doing some talking. And we may throw a winter camping trip or two on the calendar, but again, I don't want to promise anything, I don't want to get ahead of myself. And I'm not going to lie here, when I've been reading the comments, and some of those comments may have fueled the decision. A lot of people seem to like camping, and I really don't blame you. The first thing we're going to talk about here is Nintendo. Now, this news is making a lot of headlines for a number of different reasons. But here is the headline: Nintendo sues streamer for playing pre-release emulated Switch games. Now, there's a number of articles about this one, and I do recommend checking out Overkill's. Like everything I talk about, link will be in the description below right at the bottom. And here's their TLDR. A streamer played several Nintendo Switch games before release. They openly bragged about having multiple accounts to stream from. They emailed Nintendo directly about plans to continue doing so. They emailed Nintendo about helping folks find new versions of emulators such as Yuzu and Ryujinx. Nintendo is seeking damages that could rack up millions. Nintendo has a lot of evidence. 404 Media took a look at the lawsuit and they're saying that Nintendo is seeking $150,000 per infringement of its copyright. Conservatively, going by Nintendo's claim that the streamer here streamed pirated gameplay footage on at least 50 occasions in the last 2 years. He's looking at $7.5 million. Now, I've seen a lot of different reactions about this one from people online, and a lot of people seem to be taking stuff like that TLDR from Overkill and just thinking that's the entire case in a nutshell. And it kind of is, but it also kind of isn't. So did this person poke the bear being Nintendo, and basically taunt them and entice them into a lawsuit? Kind of, I would say probably yes. But at the same time here, there is some stuff that should be talked about, at least in my opinion. So this person says, "This is gross, but I have to think there's a lot more context to this particular suit. They aren't just randomly targeting people emulating." And Bob Wolf says, "They're targeting a guy who streamed pirated games before release, but suing him on the grounds of circumventing copyright, not just pirating the game, is an extremely bad precedent." Now, I am not a lawyer, this is not legal advice, and I may be misinterpreting some of this stuff here. I'm pretty sure that this is the lawsuit. Again, like everything I talk about, link will be in the description below. And if I'm wrong about anything, let me know in the comments below. So it seems the streamer's name was Every Game Guru, and taking a look at some of the information here, and it does kind of seem he was provoking Nintendo by saying stuff like he has 1,000 burner channels, and he can do this all day. So I'm not sure what he expected here, if Nintendo was telling him to stop or asking him to stop, and well, he just kept going at it, and well, Nintendo had to take even greater measures here. Again, I could be wrong, but taking a look at some of this, there is some concerning information in my opinion. For example here, point number 4 starts off about talking about playing leaked games, and then it goes into unauthorized ways, including on an unlawfully modified console or using a video game emulator, which is a piece of software that allows users to play unauthorized or pirated copies of video games developed for a specific console on another unauthorized device. And it starts going into emulation and, well, how emulation is circumventing Nintendo's technological measures. Point number 6 here, they start talking right about TPMs, which in my opinion stands for Subscribe to Mr. Sujano, but they're saying here it stands for Technological Protection Measures. Anyways, this whole point seems to be about cryptographic keys and prod keys and all of that stuff, and not necessarily pirated, leaked copies of games. Point number 7 is small here, but it talks about Nintendo having technological protection measures on the Switch console itself. Point number 8 here talks about Nintendo Switch emulators Yuzu and Ryujinx unlawfully circumventing the technological measures on the Nintendo Switch games. Point number 9, with an emulator in hand, nothing stops a user from obtaining and playing unlawful copies of virtually any game made for the Nintendo Switch console, all without paying a dime to Nintendo or to any of the hundreds of other game developers and publishers making and selling games for Nintendo Switch. In effect, Emulators turn general computing devices into tools for massive intellectual property infringement of Nintendo and others' copyrighted works. Nintendo then cites a whole bunch of different lawsuits here, including Nintendo versus Tropic Haze, which I think was Yuzu, and if I'm not mistaken, that was settled out of court. And taking a look here, it's just, in my opinion, this is more about emulation than it really is about the streamer. But again, I could be wrong. It's just there's so many points here talking about Nintendo technological protection measures and emulation. Now, if you've read the lawsuit, if you've got some legal knowledge, let me know your thoughts about everything in the comments below. In my opinion here, it seems that Nintendo is more or less going after emulation. Yes, the streamer is the target, but they're using that as a way to, I guess, say emulation, Switch emulation in specific here is illegal, which may impact emulation moving forward, especially for consoles and games that have TPMs built in, like cryptographic keys here, like Nintendo was talking about. And look at point 72 here. Linking to circumvention software is trafficking in that software. By linking to the emulators Ryujinx, Yuzu, Suyu, and Sudachi, defendant is providing those emulators to the public, violating Nintendo's rights. I do not agree with that statement at all, and well, it's in there, and this is exactly why I think this is much bigger than just someone streaming pirated games and poking the bear. And speaking about modding stuff, I guess, next up here we're talking about a very interesting mod for Red Dead Redemption 2. And this one is, well, it's just pure chaos. It's 999% speed on horses and carriages. I do recommend checking out the video because, well, it's absolute chaos, and I think survival becomes paramount in those games. Big fan of mods like this. It makes the game so much fun. Look at this nonsense. You can't even do anything with it. It's amazing. Next up, we're talking about Sony, and this one has also been circling around the news. Apparently here, Sony is possibly experimenting with dynamic game pricing. So it seems that for certain people, they'll get discounts on certain games, maybe if the game is of interest to them. They say here, in a rather odd turn of events, PlayStation Store may be rolling out dynamic pricing for certain games. Specifically, Astro Bot appears to be the target of this experiment. I noticed that the game was discounted a few days ago on the mobile app. I was surprised that this sale was not advertised on major video game websites. Curious, I went to my browser and searched for the game on the PlayStation Store while being signed out. It was $59.99. I signed in and it appeared at $44.99. So if this is true, it's very similar to something that Microsoft already has, and that is the just for you discounts on Xbox. And that happens where it's not necessarily a widespread sale. It's just a discount based on some understandings of the player's library, of the player's history, and that kind of stuff to possibly offer them a game at a discount to entice them to buy it, a game that they think the customer might want. And if PlayStation is testing this feature out, I don't think I'm going to complain. But let me know your thoughts about that one in the comments below. I think having random discounts on random games seems pretty good. I guess they're not random, they're kind of calculated and targeted. But at the same time here, I wouldn't mind signing into the PlayStation Store and seeing a game I was eyeballing on sale when it wasn't normally on sale. I think this could be a good thing, offering more sales to more people, but again, I could be wrong. Moving on, and we're talking about The Matrix, and John Lagostini here has The Matrix Awakens, that showcase demo up and running on Linux using Wayland. In my opinion, this is pretty impressive. I don't think that this game was, or the showcase rather, I guess, was ever initially compatible with Linux, and it's really nice in my opinion to see this running on Linux. It's a really cool thing overall, and it does look really good. Now, it is worth pointing out performance will probably vary from PC to PC, and John's PC is pretty beefy. I mean, he's got a Threadripper here and a 3090. So I'm wondering if someone with lesser specs would have the same result or if it would be struggling mightily. Next up, we're talking about AYANEO, and AYANEO has unveiled the AYANEO 3 along with its specs and, well, what we're going to expect here. So it seems the AYANEO 3 will have a 7-inch LCD or a 7-inch OLED, and I'm assuming here the OLED will probably be the popular choice. There's two different processors, the Ryzen 7 8840U and the Ryzen AI 9 HX370. Unfortunately, we don't know stuff like the RAM, the price, the battery, or anything of that nature just yet. A lot of people seem to be wondering about the battery. And this person at the top says something very interesting. By the time you receive this device, AYANEO 4 will be announced. So let me know your thoughts about this one. I'm very curious for performance, and I really want to know the RAM and the battery on this thing, and I'm hoping we find out that information fairly soon. I'm assuming we will. Next up, we're talking about a potentially brand new 3DS emulator. This one is called ctremu, and it's just popped up on GitHub. Taking a look here, it does say 0 FPS rate on the top. I don't necessarily know what state this emulator is in, and it does look like it may not necessarily be for Windows or Android. I could be wrong here, but taking a look here, there's not a whole lot about this one just yet. It does seem fairly new. The developer on this one is the same one that's behind ctremu, which is a Nintendo DS emulator for Linux and also Mac OS. So I'm assuming the developer knows what they're doing here, and I'm very curious to see how this one shapes up. Next up, we're talking about Universal Dreamcast Patcher, which is a free and open source tool for the Sega Dreamcast. It's really meant for patching English translations and ROM hacks on ROMs, and it just got its first update in a little over a year. The last time it was updated was back in 2023, and version 1.8 of this just dropped. So version 1.7 and 1.8 were released on the exact same day. For version 1.7, for both the patcher and the patch builder, they added support for GDI source disk images that use 2048 byte per sector ISO data tracks, instead of the standard 2352 byte per sector bin data tracks. And for version 1.8, they fixed a bug in both the patcher and the patch builder when processing GDIs with over 90 CDDA tracks. Next up here, we're talking about Xeno Crisis on the GBA. Did you know that this game was on the GBA? Well, if you didn't, it is now on the GBA. There's a physical version of this game that's just being released here by Bitmap Bureau. If you wanted to see gameplay on this one, Bitmap Bureau also has a YouTube video showcasing the game in action on a GBA. There are 3 different versions of the physical release, PAL, USA, and Japan, and it's coming in at £41. Let me know your thoughts about this one. Next up, we're talking about Intel, and it seems that Intel can't get away from CPU problems. I mean, we talked about 14th generation CPUs and 13th generation CPUs having problems. And now it seems that the Intel Core Ultra 200 launch didn't go as planned, and it's also having problems in the gaming area. It's being reported that these issues are surrounding optimization, and that fixes are going to be rolled out for it. And, well, Intel just can't seem to really catch a break here, at least in my opinion, in terms of the recent CPUs. And last up here, we're talking about Sega Saturn emulation on Windows with Yaba Sanshiro, and the developer says here, as 30th anniversary, I'm going to release a Windows version of Yaba Sanshiro. Changes are from VS 2017 to 2022, from QT5 to QT6, simplify settings menu, add the game list view, and many bug fixes. Unfortunately, I don't have a release date for you just yet, but the last stable release of Yaba Sanshiro was back in 2022. It has been quite a while. So I'm very curious to see how this new version performs. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and no fluff. We talked about a bunch today. Let me know your thoughts about absolutely any of it in the comments below. If you like this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button, check out my other videos. Don't tempt fate, save your state.